Hello. I think we're live now. James, are we live? We're working on it. If you can see me, fabulous. Hello to all of you that are out there. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a seminar on fractions, and we're going to get into how to add and subtract them. It's actually, we're going to kind of hit the basics today, and then tomorrow we're going to work it a little bit farther. Instead of doing fractions, multiplication, and division tomorrow, we're actually just going to continue with fractions, addition, and subtraction, because there's a lot of skills to learn and a lot of basics to cover in order to give you a chance to feel like you have a little bit of mastery of this before you move on. Does that sound okay? All right. All right. So my name is Sam Silver. I'm a teacher at Delphian, or I have been for past 20 years, but now I work over at Heron Books, which is the creator of all these great books that we're getting to use, all these things, Electricity in the Home, if you've been doing that, all the great books that you're using. That's where I get to work now, is helping create some of those. It's really fun. So a few things that might help. So don't forget, if you've done any of these before, you know, you can use the Q&A. I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. I may not be able to get to all of them. The 45 minutes goes pretty fast, but I'll do my best. And we don't use the chat feature. It should be turned off. If you're trying to use that, it's off for a reason. Don't worry about it, okay? Good, and I want to do a little introduction. We're not actually going to use this check sheet, but while we let everybody still log in, I want to show you this, because this is actually how you can study this more independently. I'm going to give you a nice overview of this topic over the next 2 days, but if you really want to practice and get sharp, this is how you do that. So we have these things, they're called a learning guide. And what it does is it walks you through how to learn something step by step. So it'll say, read these pages, then tell you the activity to do, read, activity, read, activity, read, activity. And it'll kind of walk you through. And there's answers for everything available online. It gives you a chance to get really, really sharp at these, because no matter what we do today, I'm just going to give you an introduction. We'll get a little tiny bit of practice. But if you really want to get sharp, you got to practice it a lot, and you got to really take the time to understand the basics well. So this you can get right off the website. It'll be emailed to you afterwards, and that'll help. And free this week is, this whole course is free from Heron for download this week. So go ahead and grab it while it's there. And if you end up deciding you want one of the actual books, you can get that from Heron for 30% off if you have gone to this webinar. So you can take advantage of that for ways to keep learning at home. So good, so let's get going. So we're gonna just read out of this pack. I just want to show you, in case you are wondering how you do more of this at home, because really I'm gonna give you an introduction. There's a whole math essentials book that covers just about every basic math thing that you could need up until algebra. And then they're also broken down by chapter. You can get individual chapters of it. So if you need them, that's how you can get them. So let's get started. Here we go. So we're going to start by reading about fractions. Good. Hopefully you can all see this screen. So we're going to start just by rolling on down. You'll see we'll skip some of the things on here. If you do the whole course, you'll get to do the whole thing. But for today, we only have time to hit some of the basics, so we'll do our best, all right? All right, here we go. So fractions. Let's start by figuring out what exactly we mean. Fractions. We use numbers to talk about amounts. It's 60 yards to that stop sign, $1.50 for that muffin, 6 more guys needed on that job. Sometimes we want to talk about only a part of a whole thing. If you're cooking, you might use half a cup of sugar. If you schedule an activity, it might be for 3/4 of an hour. When you buy food at a deli, you might buy 2/3 of a pound. So a fraction is a way to say exactly how big a part of something is. I'm going to read that again because it's a key definition. If you get nothing else today, this is a good thing to get. A fraction is a way to say exactly how big a part of something is. We can use a fraction to say that the pizza is divided into 8 equal parts, and one of those parts is gone. We would say 1/8 to represent that. All right, so I want to stop for a minute and I want to make sure we get this. So we use a fraction to show that we have equal sized parts of something. So if we cut this square into 4 equal sized parts and we have one of them, that would be shown in this fraction 1/4. The point I want to make is simply that if we take something, I just realized I'm probably in front of that. Sorry about that. Can you guys see now? Let me make it really big. All right, so we take a square and we cut it into equal sized parts. See how each part is equal? So a fraction, we can use a fraction to say it's divided into 8 equal parts. I just want to point out the equal part. If I take this and I cut it into 6 parts, but they're not equal, each one's not the same size, we can't really use fractions in the same way. We wouldn't say there's 6 parts here. We need equal parts for a fraction. Does that make sense? So if I take a pizza and I cut it into 3 parts, 1 part's here, 1 part's here, and then the rest of it is this part. Excuse me, we don't have equal sized parts, right? So I'm just going to read that again. A fraction is a way to say exactly how big a part of something is. And we can use a fraction to say that a pizza is divided into 8 equal parts. Wow, sorry. The point is, when we're using fractions, we're talking about equal sized parts of something. I think you all got it. I'm going to move on to the next thing. All right, so next we have this section in blue right here. So this is key basic. So the top number in a fraction tells how many parts we're talking about. That's called the numerator. So that's the 1 on this example. The bottom number tells how many equal parts there are. It's called a denominator. Out of shows an amount taken from a larger amount, such as 3 out of 5 students in the class were boys. The line in the fraction means number of parts out of equal parts. For example, 1/8 means 1 part out of 8 equal parts. So it's just that same thing we were just talking about. I'm going to show it again. If I say 1/3, this part is called the numerator. And it tells us how many parts we have. This part is called the denominator. And it tells us how many parts in the whole thing. So if we took a pizza and we cut it into 3 equal sized parts, if we had this colored in part, that would mean we have 1 out of the 3 equal sized parts. And this line here means out of. So we have 1 out of the 3 equal sized parts. Make sense? We'll do a couple more examples. If you get this, the rest gets easier and easier. If you already got this, sorry, hang in there with me. All right, so we're going to take a box and we're going to cut it into 4 equal sized parts. So if we're going to write a fraction, we know the denominator should be 4 because we have 4 equal sized parts. And how many do we have? Let's say all the parts with dots. That's what we have. So we could say 3 out of 4 parts have dots. Or you could read that 3/4 of the box has dots. I'm going to do one more and we'll move on. All right, so I'm going to start with the fraction on this one. So let's take 2/3. All right, so we have 2 out of 3. So that means if we have a pizza, we have 3 equal sized parts, and we have 2 out of 3. Make sense? I just realized you guys are watching this on a tiny little screen. What a fool I am. Let's get out of that. This is going to make it a lot easier to see. I'm so sorry. Here we go. We'll run through those again. So we have 2 out of 3. And we have a box. We cut it into 6 equal-sized pieces. It's almost equal. Let's pretend they're equal. I'm not a great artist. And we have 1, 2, 3. So what would we have here? We have 6 parts total. So on the bottom we put 6. And how many out of those 6 do we have? We have 3. So it would be 3 out of 6. Make sense? Okay, good. Let me check questions, see if there's anybody whose question I can answer real quick before we move on. Hello, everybody who's here. Hello, Milo. Hello, Lachlan. Hello, Shrishti. Good to see you all again. All right. Yeah, Lachlan, I realized you can't see me. And Milo, same. Sorry about that. Hopefully that worked okay. Okay, good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the next thing. So we're going to start with page 5. Okay, so how much of the shape is green? Well, we start by asking how many equal-sized parts are there? And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 of those are green. So 5 out of 6 are green. Or you could say 5/6 is green. How much of that shape is yellow? There's 6 equal pieces and 1 is yellow, so 1/6 is yellow. Good, let's take the next one. How much of this shape is blue and how much is purple? 2/6 are blue because you can see it's cut into 6 equal-sized parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2 of those parts are blue. So 2/6 are blue and 4/6 is purple. Good, and you can see you can write it as 2/6. You can use the word, or you can write 2/6, or you can write 2/6. All of those mean the same thing. Here are some more examples of fractions. So here we have 3 out of 8 are purple, or 3/8 is purple. 3/5 is purple because there's 5 parts. Here there's 7 parts, 4 of them are purple, so 4/7 are purple. And then this is a funny one, it's the same, 4/7 are purple, it's just different boxes, but it's still the same amount, huh? Good. Good, so we're gonna skip this section called fractions are a group of things. I'm just gonna point it out really fast. You can use fractions to talk about a group too. So if you have 5 apples and 3 out of the 5 apples are red, you could say 3/5 of the apples are red. So you could use it for groups of things too. It's a good way to talk about those and be able to be understood. All right, good. And we're gonna skip past sane fractions and we're gonna go right onto this section called equivalent fractions and lowest terms. Okay, equivalent means worth the same amount. So we could think of a few examples of that. Let's say $1.04. Those are equivalent because it's worth the same amount. If you went to the store, you could buy the same thing with $1 bill as you could with 4 quarters, right? So equivalent means worth the same amount. Equivalent fractions are different fractions that stand for the same amount. Here are 3 equivalent fractions that stand for the same amount. So here you see we have 1/2 because it's cut into 2 pieces, right? And we have 1 of them is green. Here we have 2/4. It's the same amount, but they cut the pizza into 4 pieces this time. So we have 2 out of the 4 pieces. Same amount said in a different way. And here we have 4/8. Again, same amount, but you can see they cut the pizza into 8 pieces. So we have 4 pieces out of the 8 that make the whole thing. So each of those would be called an equivalent fraction. Because again, equivalent means worth the same amount. All right, here are a few more. So you can see on these bars, it's the same amount of yellow, but it's cut in different ways. So 2/3, you can see why that's 2/3. 4/6, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 6. 6/9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 9 pieces. Here are some more examples of equivalent fractions. 1/5 is equivalent to or equals 2/10. 20/100 also is the same amount as 2/10 or 1/5. So you can have these different fractions, but they all stand for the same amount. So does that make sense? Good, so we're gonna make a few examples of equivalent fractions. Anybody who wants to put an example in the question and answer, I'd love to read out anything you have. Yeah, Lachlan, perfect, 8/16 and 16/32. And we can draw that one out. It's a big one. We'll see how I do here. So if we had a pizza, oh, that one's not as dark. Let's use the black one. We have a pizza. And we cut it into 4 pieces. Now it's 8 pieces. Oh gosh, this is gonna be tough. Now it's 16 pieces. Oh, that was really bad. I guess we'll just stick with that. 8/16. So if we had half of the pizza, we would have 8 pieces. Let's see if my drawing's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 out of the 16 total pieces. And you could probably tell on this little drawing, that's the same amount as 1/2 a pizza. Great. Great, great. Wow, some people put some huge ones in there. 50/100 is equal to 501,000. Excellent. Milo said 1/2 is equal to 2/4, which is equal to 3/6, which is equal to 4/8, which is equal to 5/10. That's a really good one. I'm going to write that one out, Milo. I love that one. That's a lot of equivalent fractions. So we have 1/2 equals 2/4, which is also equal to 3/6, which is also equal to, what was the last one you said? 4/8, which is also equal to 5/10. Pretty cool. Nice, Milo. All right, I think you guys got that. I just want to show one more thing before we move on. So we skipped this section, but 1/2 could be written like that, all right? It could also be written like that. So you often see those different types of ways of writing it. It's the same thing, it's just different ways of writing it. So if we wrote 3/4, that would be the same as writing 3/4. So this still means 3 out of 4, and this means 3 out of 4. Good. And again, there's a little bit more we could get into on that. We're going to skip that for today, just because we only have 45 minutes. We're going to try to get as much done as we can in the time we have, all right?
And I'm just going to jump in super quick. Hi, I'm James.
James!
I'm just going to change one setting that I think will make it a bit easier to see what's happening on the board.
Great.
All right. I hope that should help things a bit.
Let's test it. That looks a little better.
Okay, good.
Hope that helps. Great, and if it's not working, just put in the Q&A and maybe I can write a little bit thicker. Great, great, great. Okay, so now let's see what's next. Okay, so now we're gonna get introduced to the idea of finding equivalent fractions. So here it comes. So we're going to read this first section called Finding Equivalent Fractions. To find a different fraction that is equivalent to your fraction, you can multiply both the numerator, the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number, of your fraction by the same number. This is called fattening a fraction. To find a fraction equivalent to 5 out of 8, or 5/8, multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So you see here they took 5/8 and they multiplied both 5 and 8 times 2. So you got 5 times 2 is 10 and 8 times 2 is 16. And you can see we end up with a fraction that's equivalent because we have the same amount, it's just divided in different ways. So 5/8 and 10/16 are equivalent fractions. Here's another example. So if you start with 1/3 and you multiply 1 times 4 and 3 times 4, you get 4/12. 1/3 is the same amount as 4/12. Okay, good. So we're gonna do a couple examples of that. Here we go. So let's take 1/2. So we're gonna multiply, we want an equivalent fraction. We wanna fatten it. That means we wanna make those bigger. So we're gonna take 1, and let's do, just for fun, you can choose any number actually, and this works. But let's do times 3. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. So we have 1/2 equals 3/6. We know those are the same amount, just written in a different way. Either way, if we have a pizza, we have 1/2, or we have 3/6. Same amount of pizza, just written different ways. Make sense? Good, so that's fattening a fraction. So we'll do one more example. I'm gonna put the Q&A up and we'll do it on the board. So let's take 2/3 and let's decide on some ways we could fatten that fraction. I will do a couple on the board, but I wanna see some on the Q&A. Go ahead and fatten that to a couple different equivalent fractions. Ooh, Lachlan Wydrow put some incredible fractions on there. Somebody recognized James from the science videos. That's great. Good. Somebody said 2/3 is equal to 4/6 because what they did is they took 2 times 2 and 3 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. Those are equivalent fractions. Excellent. Good. Anybody else have an equivalent fraction to 2/3? Great. So 4/6 is good. Somebody said 6/8, but I don't think that works. I'm not sure how what you could multiply. 2 times what would make 6? I guess 2 times 3. Okay, so let's try this. So we go 2 times 3 would make 6, but then we have to do it times the same number. So 3 times 3, same number. So that'd be 6/9. So 2/3 and 6/9 would be equivalent fractions. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. Good. Let's do a couple more just to finish this. A really important idea because you can't add and subtract fractions unless you understand equivalent fractions. All right, let's go 3/4. So I'm going to do one. Let's do 3 times 5. We're going to make a big equivalent fraction and 4 times 5. So 3 times 5 is 15 and 4 times 5 is 20. So we know that 3/4 is equivalent to 15/20. Same amount. Somebody said, I'll give you 3/4 of a dollar if you give me 15/20 of a dollar. Both of you would be getting a good deal. You'd just be getting a different type of coin. Good. All right, good. I think we got that one down. I'm going to check the Q&A, see if there's any questions I need to answer before we move on. Let's see what we got. Good. We had some really nice examples. Isabella said 8/12. I'm going to write these down because they're really good. It was 2/3 thirds was equal to what? Isabella said 8 over 12, which is right. And Milo went huge. He said 100 over 150. All of those are equal to each other. Excellent. Great, great, great. We're going to move on. Looks like you guys are doing really well. Keep it up. All right, so now, okay, so now we're going to go on to something called reducing a fraction. So we're going to start right down here. So it says you can also find an equivalent fraction by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. For example, to find a fraction that's equivalent to 2/6, you could divide the numerator and denominator by 2. So here they give the example, 2/6. So we divide 2 divided by 2 is 1, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we get 2/6 equals 1/3. 2/6 and 1/3 are equivalent fractions. Dividing both the numerator and the denominator of a fraction by the same number to find an equivalent fraction is called reducing the fraction. Here's another example of reducing a fraction. So they take 4 over 12. And then they divide both of them by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So they get 1/3. So 4/12 is the same amount as, or is equivalent to, 1/3. Good, so let's do a couple examples of that. All right, so, we could do this. This will be great. So Milo said 100 out of 150 is equal to 2/3. So here's a way we could reduce it instead of fatten it. So we go 100 divided by 50. 150 divided by 50. This is a big one. I probably should have done this later, but here we go. So 100 divided by 50 is 2, and 150 divided by 50 is 3. So that's how we reduce. You can see in here we're getting smaller. Even though the amount's the same, the numbers we're using are getting smaller. That's why we call it reducing. And when we go back that way and we use multiplication, we call it fattening. You can call it whatever you want. I like the term fattening because 2 gets fatter and 3 gets fatter. Kind of a funny way to think about it. All right, a couple more. Let's see. Let's take 5 out of 10. Let's reduce that. I'm going to do this one on the board, and then we'll do a couple where I won't do it on the board, and we'll let you guys put the answers out. So I'm going to divide 5 by 5 and 10 by 5, okay? So 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we know that 5 over 10 is equal to 1 over 2, or 5 out of 10, or 5/10 is equal to 1/2. Great. All right. I'm going to put another one up. I'll put a few up, and then we'll let you answer them in the question and answer section. Let's see. Let's do 6 out of 8, and let's do 3 out of 9, and let's do 2 out of 4. Go ahead and let's find some equivalent fractions to those. You could fatten them, or you could reduce them, whatever you want to do. Let's just find some equivalent fractions to each of those. When you put them up in the question and answer, I'll put them in over there. Let me see how I can do this without getting in the way. Nice, we have lots of answers rolling in. Jordan says he can't see the marker. Can you guys see the marker? Would somebody say yes or no? If you can't see it, I'll see what I can do to darken it up. No, okay, kind of. All right, so I'm going to darken this up a little bit. Sorry about that. So here we got 6 out of 8. And three out of 9, and 2 out of 4. Is that a little bit easier to see? Great, and we got a lot of answers rolling in. All right. So Shrishti said 6/8 is equal to 12/16. Perfect. I'm going to write that right down here. 12/16. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but since we have lots of answers rolling in, I'll just write them little. Milo. Wow. All right. Milo says 2/4 is equal to 1,000 2,000ths. And he's absolutely right. So that's this one. 1,000 2,000ths. Excellent. Jacob says 3/9 is equal to 9/27. Perfect. Great. So let's see. On this one, somebody fattened the fraction. On this one, somebody fattened the fraction. And on this one, somebody fattened the fraction. Could anybody reduce any of those fractions? Nice. We got a couple people that said I can. I can't wait to see your answers. All right, I'm going to do a reduce. I'm going to reduce this one first. So I'm going to divide 2 divided by 2, and I have to do the same on both. So 4 divided by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So there we go. I reduced that one. I took the easy one. Anybody get any of the others? Milo, you nailed it. Milo says 6/8 is equal to 3/4. I'm going to write that big. Put an arrow here. It's not really a math symbol, just fun. All right, 3/4. Okay, good. Nice job. All right, I guess we better move on because we're going to run out of time. Now, somebody says 3/9 can't be reduced. I was going to move on, but I feel like I've been challenged, and I have to argue with that. So 3 divided by 3. I'm going to just go real easy. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 9 divided by 3, same amount, is 3. So 3/9 is an equivalent fraction with 1/3. All right. All right, good. Great. Let's move on to the next section. Let's see what we got planned next. Okay, so we're going to skip the lowest terms. We're going to do some of this stuff in the next lesson, but I wanted to be able to get to actually adding and subtracting some fractions by the end of today. So one of the important things that you have to know is in order to add or subtract fractions, one of the things you have to do is you have to get them so they have a common denominator. That means the bottom number of the fractions has to be the same before you can add or subtract them. So sorry, we're getting there. So we're going to read adding and subtracting fractions now. So when you add fractions that have the same denominator, remember that's the bottom number on a fraction. So you say 1/2, the 2 is the denominator. When you add fractions that have the same denominator, add the numerators, the top number, and put the answer over the same denominator. And then it says reduce the answer to lowest terms. That means you're going to reduce the fraction, but we're not going to get into that today. Today, we're just going to work on being able to add or subtract some fractions. How much time do we have left? Oh my gosh, we're running out. We got 10 minutes. Let's get some of these examples done. This can be fun. All right, so we're going to add a couple fractions. So here they have 2/8 plus 4/8 equals 6/8. So let's do that on the board. Okay, so remember, we need the denominators to be the same. On this one, the denominators are already the same. So we have an 8 on the bottom. This is the denominator. I'll put a big D there, denominator. And the numerator is 2. So we have 2/8. I don't remember what it was, but we'll do plus 4/8. 4/8. So we have the same denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the numerators together. So 2 plus 4 equals 6. Is my head in the way? No. And then we just take that same denominator and put it underneath. Hope you can read that. So 2/8 plus 4/8 equals 6/8. Does that make sense? Good. So a way we could look at that is here's a whole thing, right? I love this. This is a volcano. If we break it up into 2 equal-sized parts, hopefully I don't break it when I break it. Ah, come on, thing. Oh, Marty, you'll kill me if I break this. I've had it broken before. Hang tight. So we break it up into 2 equal-sized pieces, right? So this is 1/2, and this is 1/2. So if we take that and we put it on the board, here's how that works. We have, this is 1/2. So we're going to represent that here with 1 out of 2. Okay, so that's this one. And we want to add it to this one, which is also the same thing. This is 1 out of 2. 1 out of 2. So we do 1 plus 1 equals 2. And then we don't add 2 and 2 together. Otherwise, we would end up with 2 out of 4. But we don't have 2 out of 4, do we? We add those together, we have 2 out of 2. We have a whole mountain, which 2 out of 2 would make one whole thing, right? So we just take the 2's and we put it there. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. So now we're just going to do a few more, and then I'll put a couple problems up, and in the time we have left, we'll do some fun problem solving. So let's do it. And I'll get a couple slightly more tricky ones. But first, we're going to do just 1 or 2 of these easier ones. So let's take 3. God, I hope you can read it. It's not the prettiest. 3/10. So 3 out of 10, or 3/10, plus 4 tenths. So we have the same denominator, so we don't need to do anything with the denominator. We just add 3 plus 4, and we get 7/10. Pretty simple, yeah? Good. Now, what do we do if the denominator is different? Well, then we have to change one of the fractions. So let's take something, let's keep pretty simple, but make it a little more challenging. So we have 1/3 plus 1/2. Actually, that's going to be a really hard one to do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/6. So we can't do anything with this yet. We have to get the denominators, the bottom numbers, to be the same before we do anything. So this one we could do pretty easy. We can just fatten this fraction. So I'm going to fatten that. So 3 times 2 makes 6. 1 times 2 makes 2. So I'm going to change this from 1/3 to 2/6 because I know that 1/3 equals 2/6. So now we have 2/6. And now I can add that, right? 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 plus 6. Oh, no, we don't do that. I almost made a mistake I've been telling you not to do. 6 plus 6. No, not 6 plus 6. We just moved the 6 over. So 3/6. So 1/3. I'm just going to write that here so we remember that's what we started with. 1/3 plus 1/6 equals 3/6. There we go. All right. So let's see what we got. Oh my gosh, 4 minutes left. So I'm going to put a few problems up on the board. We'll go problem number 1 is 1/4, 1/4. I hope you guys can read these. Plus 2. Ooh, that's a little darker. I hope that works. 4ths. Okay. Go ahead and solve away. Problem number 2. Problem number 2 is 2/3 plus 2/6. And then we'll do down here, problem number 3 is, we'll make this one a really challenging one. Let's go 4/5 plus 3/15. All right, I'm going to get out of the way and let you guys work away on that. And then as you come up with some answers, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and I can read some. And then in about 1 minute, we'll solve each of those together on the board. So if there's any you weren't able to get an answer to, we can solve it all together. Good, so I'm going to be quiet. I'm just going to let you go ahead and do some work. Hopefully you have some pencil and paper. Try to not get in the way here as I watch the question and answer roll in. Nice. Great. Without yelling out the answer, I'm just going to say, Alea nailed it. Excellent. Hartley, you got it right. Milo, that's excellent. Perfect. Great, Shrishti. Nice, Aya. Great, Ariana. Good, Jacob. Good. Okay, you guys did really well. We're almost out of time, so we're going to solve these really as quickly as I can on the board for anybody who wants to see how we got the answers. So 1/4 plus 2/4. 1 plus 2 is 3. We don't add the bottom. We have 3/4. Good. Question 2 is a little more tricky because the denominators are not the same. So we're going to have to fix that. So we're going to go 2. I'm going to go times 2. So we get 4 and times 2, 6. It's a little hard to read. Hopefully you can bear with me here. So we have 4 plus 2 is 6. And then we have the same denominator now. So we have 6 over 6. Funny enough, that's one whole thing, which is the same answer for this. So now this one, I'm going to do the first one here because it's smaller. So I'm going to do both of them times 3. So 5 times 3 is 15, and 4 times 3 is 12. So we go 12 plus 3 is 15. And we know that's the same. We don't add them together. So we got 15, 15 fifteenths. Excellent work, everybody. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. I know we only did adding and we didn't get too far into some of the really complex ones, but I think everybody that I saw in here, I could tell you guys learned the basics of how to add a fraction. I hope you guys learned a lot. It was really fun for me. Thank you. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, you can put them into the question and answer session. And if you want to just study it more, I just want to remind you, you can get the books for these. They look like this. You can get them at heronbooks.com and you can order those. The learning guides come free, and anybody who's attending the webinar, you can get a nice discount on them. Or for this week, since you attended the webinar, you can actually download the book so you can have a digital copy of it and download the learning guide. And you can keep going, and it'll give you lots of fun exercises and practice you can do at home. And you can fill in some of the stuff that we had to skip over because we only have 45 minutes. So it's a great way to keep learning. Any math subject you want, you should be able to get out of this big old book here. And then the adding and subtracting fractions, you can get that free right now. So go ahead, take advantage of that, download it from the heronbooks.com website, and then you can keep learning at home, which is great. All right, thank you so much. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow, and we'll keep going with this.